Afternoon, everybody. I am Michael Buning, Director of Performing Arts and Culture here at Asia Society, Texas. On behalf of Asia Society, in print and teamwork arts, we would like to welcome you to the 5th JLF Houston here at Asia Society. We are going to get started now with our next session, which is Water, Water Everywhere, but Not a Drop to Drink. Varsha Bajaj in conversation with Andrea White. In this session spanning continents, it will look at the repercussions of climate change and the misuse of water. Varsha Bajaj's recent book, Thirst, is a poignant take on class, wealth, and equity around the disparity of water in the suburbs of Mumbai, India. This book has been getting so much critical acclaim and attention. Thirst was recently announced as a global read aloud selection for 2022, which means on October 3rd, it's going to be read aloud in 85 countries. So we're very pleased to have Varsha with us here today. She will be in conversation with the writer and civil leader, Andrea White, and they will discuss the asymmetrical patterns of resource access in a parched world. Varsha Bajaj is the New York Times bestselling author of the middle grade novels Thirst, Count Me In, and Abby Spencer Goes to Bollywood, which was shortlisted for the Sybil's Award and included in the Spirit of Texas Reading Program. She's also written the picture books The Home Builders, which is a Dolly Parton Imagination Library selection, and This Is Our Baby, Born Today, which is a Bank Street Best book. Andrea White is a retired lawyer, a committed writer, a devoted grandmother, and an almost lifelong Houstonian. But most of all, she is an avid reader who loves a good story. At the end of this session, we will have time for a Q&A, and then Varsha will also be signing books out in the Grand Hall after the talk. But now, let's welcome to the stage Varsha Bajaj and Andrea White. Thank you.
Are you reading first? Should I? Well, it doesn't matter. We can jump into questions, or you can do your reading first, whatever you want. I could read. Sorry. Questions first? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's the way it should be, right? Oh, sorry. Is mine on? Yeah. Mine's on, right? Yeah. Okay. Well. You know, I'm so happy to be here because this is such a great book. And for those of you who haven't read it yet, when you read it, know you're reading along with 85 other countries, the people in them. That's something exciting that we have this global communication through this Houstonian here. So anyway, but a Houstonian who has deep roots in India. Yes. And this story has deep roots in India. Do you want to tell our group about that?
Sure. First of all, thank you to the Asia Society and to Imprint for inviting me. This is very thrilling. Thank you, Andrea, for accepting my request to talk to me today.
Maybe you'll help me in Wordle more if
there you go. That's
because that's what I'm fawning on you.
Yes. Though I took 6 turns today. Oh, so I don't know. But this is wonderful because I'm not stressed. I'm going to imagine that I'm in a cafe and we're chatting, right? I was born and brought up in India, and I came to America in the fall of 1986 to go to graduate school. This book is set in Mumbai. My family has deep roots in Mumbai. My father has lived and died in Mumbai. I have 3 generations who've lived in Mumbai now. So it's a place I love. It's a second home. And fresh out of college, so that was many a year ago, I worked in an early intervention clinic that was in a neighborhood very like the neighborhood that Minnie lives in Thirst. I was young, very idealistic, And I went in armed with a college degree, a set of useless theoretical knowledge, and evaluation tests, which I quickly realized were not going to serve me well. Instead, I decided to share roti and sabzi with the clients in the clinic and to hear their stories. And it helped me to bond, it helped me to understand. And these people have lived in my heart for all these decades. I have wanted to write about them, but early on, I wasn't sure if I was ready. In 2020, I went to India in January, right before the pandemic. And I went back and visited all of the neighborhoods with our family driver. He wouldn't let me go alone. And I took a lot of pictures. I came back, and then the lockdown started. And I thought this was my opportunity to see if I could put these characters on the page. And that is the background of Thirst.
Well, you know, and I want to return to the characters because the main character is so spunky and, you know, makes such a difference in her world. But I guess my first question as a writer, you know, it's so hard to weave instructive lessons into fiction without making the whole book spinach or something. And how you did this, these lessons about water conservation and water scarcity and how you wove those into the fabric of the book. I'd love it if you'd tell everybody a little bit just about what you learned on those topics and your technique for layering them so that hopefully kids come out thinking that they're not going to take water so much for granted, but without just cramming it down their throats.
Well, you know, when you write for kids, you're writing for probably the most discerning audience that there is. They don't give you a second chance. They really don't. They roll their eyes and put the book away. So you have to hold on to them. When I went down the rabbit hole of research for this book, I learned that 700 million plus people on our planet don't have access to clean drinking water. And I was shocked. I was stunned. I was like, why aren't we talking about this more? I shouldn't have been shocked because, you know, I had been to the neighborhoods. I had seen the plastic storage bins outside every home, but I was still shocked. And I kept going down that research rabbit hole till one day I told myself, enough already, you know, because I could do this forever. And I sat, this is my process for every novel. I sit down with a brand new yellow legal pad, or sharpened number 2 pencil, hopefully with a window where I can look out, and I just start to scribble. And I start to imagine the book, the characters, where they live, what they do, in my mind's eye. And I do this for a while, till the characters start to feel like my own kids, like I care about them. Then I feel awful because as a writer, I have to put them in horrible trouble. But I keep doing that till these characters start to talk to me. No, I'm not on medication. They don't really talk to me, but it feels kind of like they do. But so that was kind of my process. You know, my protagonist in Thirst is 12 years old, and when the book starts out, she's a little naive. She's been protected, even if she might be poor. She's been protected by the presence of her family. And then slowly, I don't want to spoil the book for anybody who's going to read it, but over the course of the book, the story, she has to stand on her own.
Well, she really did, and I think that's one of the more interesting parts of the book for me, too, because as I read it, she was such a change agent. And I didn't know if she would be an outlier in Indian society today as a young 12-year-old girl who saw that she could make her own destiny and make change, or if you viewed her as more, you met a lot, you know a lot of these girls, and I'd love for you to talk to us about that.
I think that women in India are spunky, in spite of everything, in spite of the patriarchal society, which is changing. I talk to so many women, like just, I don't know how many, but I've acknowledged a few in my writer's note, author's note. They were true feminists. Now, these were older women. They were, you know, they shared stories about having to quit their education sometimes in 5th grade, sometimes a little later. And there were so many various reasons why they had to do that. But they were so determined that the history would be different, that things would be different for their daughters. And so I think that Minnie came out of all of those conversations. And Minnie has her moments when she doubts whether she can even do anything at all. And she's scared, and she makes mistakes, but she finds a way.
Another character who is just 12 who has adult-sized problems, like so many young kids do in the States today, but she really she confronted them. Well, you know what? As we're walking down the aisles, we both saw friends who were writers and who've come here, and I think we're all in awe that, you know, English is your second language and you're writing in that. Can you just tell us a little bit about the challenges and the opportunities there, and why you're so good at Wordle?
So yes, English is my second language, but I do have to confess that Marathi is my first language. I'm a Maharashtrian from Mumbai, married to a Punjabi, and I was educated in English, and of course, I've lived here for a long time. But at this point, I can still read and write and speak Marathi and Hindi. But if you asked me to write in one of those languages, I think I would struggle. So I can't take credit.
English is really your primary language at this point.
Yes, it is my primary language.
Okay.
I mean, I might have to, if I had to, I could write in the other languages, but I write in English.
So what is your advice for anybody in the audience who wants to write, and for anybody in the audience who wants to raise a reader, a good reader?
if you want to write, read. Read, read, read. I don't think you can be a writer if you don't read. I honestly think that. Somebody once said that if you want to write a picture book, read 1,000 of them. If you want to write a middle grade, read 100 of them. So I believe that that's true. I would also say, one, be brave, because writing is both an act of faith and of bravery. Because before I start a novel, it's all in my head and it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And then I start writing, and the first draft is the furthest from gorgeous. It really is. It's for nobody's eyes but my own. And so I would say writing is about rewriting. It's not a performance art. So be patient with yourself. Don't expect that the first draft you write is your last. And the other thing I would say is also be strong, because if you are going to walk that path and become a writer, be ready for rejection. A lot of rejection. And if you can't deal with rejection and feedback, because you're going to get a lot of both. You're going to get a lot of rejection, you're going to get a lot of critique. And Andrea and I talk about that so often. You know, you've got to toughen up. You've got to toughen up.
It helps you in life, too, not just in writing, if you can withstand criticism.
Yes.
You know, your advice is reminding me of a passage, one of my favorite passages in your book. Shanti holds my hand and tells me, "You are not alone, dear Minnie, and you're very brave." Over and over, she chants it like it's a mantra. "You're not alone, you're very brave." And slowly, I began to believe her. So anyway, and I've got to add, too, that there's a lot of poetry in this book, which, in addition to the facts about water scarcity and this beautiful story about Minnie finding her voice and having an impact on her community, it's interspersed with poetry, which is a really unusual blend. So how did that come to be?
There is a hidden poet in me that sneaks out every time I write a picture book, which is why I love picture books. They are the closest to poetry. Without writing poetry. And so in the very first draft, not the very first draft, but the draft that was submitted to my editor, Nancy Paulson at Penguin Random House, there was one poem. And she read that and she said, "I really like this. Do you think that you could write a few more?" And I shared with Andrea that I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jacqueline Woodson. She's a Newbery winner and the author of Brown Girl Dreaming, which if you haven't read, please do. It's a beautiful book, but it's also edited by Nancy Paulson, who is my editor. And I am in awe of Jacqueline Woodson's work, and so I had to have a phone conversation with my editor and say, "You are Jacqueline Woodson's editor. I am terrified to write any poetry for you." And she said, "If I didn't think you could do it, I wouldn't ask you." She's kind of brusque like that. But it shook me out of my, okay, and I decided to give it a go. And yeah, so there's about 7 or 8 poems in the final draft.
It's an interesting combination and way to tell a story. I feel like I need to save some room for you to read, but just a couple of last questions. We never talk shop without you mentioning hero writers and hero teachers and librarians. And I bet we have some in the audience that you might want to give a shout out to. But what do you mean by, what have you seen in that hearty band of public servants? I owe, and every author owes a debt of gratitude to librarians and teachers. You know, our world is getting complicated. There's just so much stimuli out there. There's TikTok. There are YouTube videos, and there are endless distractions for young people. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to grab their attention and bring them to the written page. And without librarians and teachers, to me, they're the heroes. They are the unsung heroes. And each one of us needs to support them in whatever way we can. And I want to share one story, if we have the time. I think
we
so.
do, right? So this is, we're going to go back to the early days of the pandemic, so March 2020, yeah. We adults were trying to grasp this new reality. And a teacher from New Jersey emailed me and said that her classroom had read Count Me In, which was my novel that came out in 2019. And she said, would you be willing to visit with my students over Zoom? And I don't think I'd quite used Zoom, maybe once. And I said, well, I'm willing to try. And she said, you know, I haven't done this before either, so let's just see if it works. The night before we were supposed to, I was supposed to present, there was a freak late snowstorm in New Jersey. And power lines were down and whatnot. I saw it in the news. And so I thought, wow, I bet she's going to have to cancel. So around 7:30, 8 o'clock, I emailed her and I said, are we still on? And she said, well, as of now, we have power, so yes, we are. The next morning, I log on to Zoom. The classroom had about 6 or 7 students, all separated by plexiglass with masks on. There were 2 students who were Zooming in from their bedrooms, from home. One of them was in isolation, and there were 3 other students who were Zooming in from grandparents' house or something like that. So I thought, wow. These kids had not only read the book, one of the boys opens the book and says, Miss Varsha, on page so and so and so, you said la 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 la.
And you were wrong, right?
Yeah. Of course. And I was like, this is incredible. Here we are, all the adults moaning and groaning about Zoom and how are we going to connect and what are we going to do? And there were the kids. They had not only read the book, they had their questions. And they were there 100% even from isolation. So, and I attribute this to that amazing teacher. I really do. Because somehow she had communicated the importance of reading to them. So I think there are librarians and teachers that are doing way more than they're required to, and I am grateful, just grateful. The Global Read Aloud, for example, was started by a librarian. Her name is Pernille Rip. She is a Dutch immigrant to the US, and she started this program over 10 years ago. Every year she curates a list of books for elementary school, middle school, and high school. And she has created this community where, oh.
Are we over? Oh, 5 minutes. It's
Okay, she's created this community where schools in 85 countries are going to participate starting October 3rd. So if you happen to be a teacher or a librarian, please come and speak to me after we're done.
Well, it looks like we have 5 minutes for your reading, so maybe we want to either skip it or
What do you want to do?
I don't care. Whatever you
Okay,
want.
I'll just read. Sorry? Read?
Read, okay.
Okay.
And then we'll go to questions. Your signs are dim in the dark. It's hard to see them, I'm sorry.
Reading the last paragraph from chapter 1. We head home as the sun starts to dip. There is a line for the water tap on the main street. Water pressure must be weak today. When it doesn't get through the web of makeshift hoses, people must line up at the main source. The water line snakes around the block, and we hear the sounds of insults being hurled and see some men shoving one another. There are shrieks. Women scatter. Angry noises fill my ears. Another fight's breaking out. We don't wait to see what happens. Sanjay grabs my hand, and we turn around and away from the scene and find our way home through alleys and side streets. My heart thumps along with my running feet. Our Father has told us 1,000,000 times over the years, if you invite trouble, it will come. It will stay for chai and for dinner. We definitely didn't want to invite trouble.
Well, maybe we should go to questions. Yeah.
Can I read one poem?
Yeah, I think you.
Okay, I'm going
it's
to
your
read one
deal.
poem.
You can read whatever you want.
The water reaches out to the horizon as far as my eyes can see. Sometimes the sea gently rolls, rocking the fishing boats. Other days, it whirls and rises up, smashing against the rocks. They say water is life. Does it know the trouble it causes? The fights, the lines, the heartache? Today, though, it's calm, beautiful, like yards and yards of a blue sari, woven with threads of silver. But what will tomorrow bring? Thank you all. Thank you.
So anybody have any questions for Varsha?
Thank you, Varsha and Andrea. I have a quick question. My name is Zenith. I'm right here.
Yes.
Oh.
So what made you think of this particular topic? There must have been something in your mind you were thinking when you wrote this and this particular title. And who was your target audience? Because you mentioned children in the beginning, and I haven't read your book, and I look forward to reading it. But what was your inspiration? And that's a very unique title, and that's the reason why I'm asking.
This book is being marketed for 10 and up, so middle grade. Like I said, I was struck by the facts of water scarcity. In Mumbai, statistics say that 40% of people live in poor neighborhoods. They receive 5% of the water. Water is, as we all know, a basic need for life. It also impacts our food production, our health, and education. So that's what made me write this book. I also, the title refers not just to thirst for water, but thirst for opportunity, thirst for education, thirst for a chance.
Great question. Anybody else? Way back in the back.
Hello. Hi, Varsha.
Hi.
I'd like to share an anecdote more than a question.
Okay.
When you were asked about the language and things like that, I too am a fourth generation Bombay person from South Bombay, like you. And it was I went to a Jesuit school. And we were when I was in my 7th grade, I was shocked into learning Hindi and Marathi by our principal, who was a Jesuit priest from Cordoba in Spain. And he basically chided all of us and said, I can speak fluent Hindi and Marathi, and he could. How come you guys think you're brown sahibs? And that jolted us, and that's why I gave my Prathmik, Paramparik, and Pravesh exams in the central government board exams and learned Hindi. And
I did too.
You did too?
I did too. Did you read Nahush?
Yeah.
Yes, I did too.
Oh, wow. So I just thought I'd share that it took a Spanish priest in Mumbai to make me learn Hindi and Marathi. आता पण मी मराठी नाही विसरून गेला.
There you go. Thank you. मी मराठी छान बोलते. आणि okay, I'm going to go back to English so everybody understands, and I don't exclude everybody. I don't write in those languages, but I have roots in those languages because I have very heartfelt ties to Indian music. And the lyrics are in Hindi and Marathi, so I do speak the languages.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, there's somebody up there.
You see somebody? Ah, in the middle.
Hi, Varsha.
Hi.
Since you mentioned that you also are rooted in the languages that you grew up with, Marathi and Hindi specifically, do you find yourself translating those emotions and those feelings which cannot be literally translated and yet convey in a book in the choice of your language, which is English?
You know, before I became a writer, was a therapist. Yes. And so the language of emotion to me is wordless. And I haven't thought about whether I mean, I'm being honest with you, I haven't thought about whether I think of emotions in Marathi or Hindi. I do think I do retain some of the Indian sensibility in terms of emotional expressiveness.
Thank you. Got anything, anybody else for Varsha?
There's somebody up there.
Oh, yes, sir.
The United Nations made a report that Third World War will be based on water, fighting between the nations. Has that idea ever crossed your mind when you wrote this book?
No. No, I mean, you know, like I said, I did go down the research hole, and
Varsha, could you repeat that question? I had a little trouble hearing it.
He said that it's been said that in the future a lot of wars and fights will result from water scarcity. I thought of it as a global issue, and I wanted to give children a window into a world and an issue that they may not be as familiar with as some adults. Because I do think they're going to inherit this problem, right? I mean, the kids of tomorrow are going to have to deal with this one way or the other. So I did think of that.
And I think one thing you did so well is, rather than try to tell people that directly, you had your character have to stand in water lines and her employer have a swimming pool.
Yes.
And so it just right there in one frame told a big story.
Show, don't tell.
Yeah. We've writers are all hit over the head with that.
Show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, the other conventional wisdom that I heard again and again was, if you set a middle grade novel in a country outside of the US, it may only do mid to fair business. And I was 100% prepared and ready for that. And I am literally in a state of shock that Thirst debuted on the New York Times bestseller list, which goes to show that sometimes conventional wisdom may not be accurate.
If you write a really good book. I see our guy back here. I think we've got to close. It's been so much fun being with you guys, and Varsha, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you, Varsha and Andrea. Thank you so much for being with us here today.